Ladies and gentlemen, it's Late Night in the Heartland with Jeffrey Daugherty, and you better share it out like a motherfucker, because Courtenay Turner is going to be live on the show tonight. So get your trays comfortably back with that nice chair you have. Grab a beer, grab a smoke, grab a smoke, you know what I'm saying? And know that Odin is here! Global Enlightenment Radio Network.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, cousins of all ages, great to have you in the house tonight. See a lot of new faces, see a lot of regular faces. See, I didn't say old because, you know, some people get a little touchy. Tell me about it. Next month, I'll be 59 years old. Are you serious, guys? Can't believe I've been doing this 40 years, but I have. It's crazy. We got a guest tonight, so let's get right to it. A little thing I like to call CNN headline news. Not that CNN. It's the Cousins News Network. And if you want to be part of CNN, the Cousins Network News, all you have to do is go over here to jeffreydaugherty.com, and you see the button here that says Patriot Switch. Well, are you a patriot? Have you switched? Why are you still buying from Amazon? Why are you still buying from the big box stores? Why are you still buying from Walmart? You can get everything that you need and run out of on a monthly basis, and you can get it from people that are Americans, that have everything made. There's not a child-proof cap in the place because it is quality stuff. And if you want to make the Patriot Switch, just hit that button. Give us your real email. Give us your real name. We'll tell you how to make a real difference. This is how we defeat the cabal from the ground up. And this is also where you send me information that you think should be on CNN headline news. And while you're there, let's defeat the cabal from the top down. Click the Freedom Law button, and you'll find out how 99% of people don't have to pay federal income tax. And when we stop doing that, we start defunding the cabal big time. All right, so let's jump into some CNN. We've only got about 15 minutes tonight. And this, to me, is very disturbing, and we've got to spread the news far and wide. It looks like, folks, that many public schools have what are called secret gender transition closets. Now, as I understand it, this is being reported by Epoch Times. As I understand it, this is something that started in college, but groups fear that parents are being kept in the dark. Trans closet rooms stocked with transgender clothes and accessories for students to change into after arriving to school and then back out of before going home, are being discovered in public schools, and there's indications that they're being kept a secret from the parents. In a recent TikTok video, thank God for narcissism, In a recent TikTok video, thank the gods for narcissism, the California teacher implies that the trans closet he started at the high school where he works is meant to be kept from parents. The goal of the transition closet is for our students to wear the clothes that their parents approve of, come to school, then swap out into the clothes that fit who they truly are, the teacher said. The California Family Council and others eventually confirmed the identity of the teacher as Oakland Unified School District teacher, Spanish teacher Thomas Martin Edwards. How are you going to teach Spanish with a name like Thomas Martin Edwards? But anyway, who's also the founder of the Queer Teacher Fellowship. My initial reaction is that all the Queer Teacher Fellowship members should get a set of hot lead earrings, but let me just say they should all be fired, folks. If your kids are still in public school, then you are not a great parent. I'm just going to say it. That's the way it is. But I got to have jet skis and Mercedes and a big... You're not a good parent if your kids are still in public school. Period. End of story. Next news item. Wow. The Rockefeller Foundation is predicting famine, the next global food crisis that could begin in the next 6 months. Be smart, prepare, put some food away. If you've waited too long, but stop it. And by the way, why is it meat that they're targeting? Ask yourself, why is it meat that they're targeting? And in what some people, including the head of the Global Enlightenment Radio Network, says is a really great day for free speech, I'm not convinced yet, but you all know this. Twitter's accepted Elon Musk's $44 billion takeover bid. So Elon Musk is now in charge of the little bluebird. Congress has agreed to his $54.2 per share offer. The board of directors has approved his offer, and Twitter has a purpose and relevance that impacts the entire world. And Musk says he's going to take it private, and there's not going to be any censorship. Funny thing, I've been kicked off of more platforms than I can remember literally, but I never got kicked off of Twitter. We have about 100,000 followers. It's crazy. I don't understand it, and I'm not convinced that it's all great that now that Elon has taken over, but I hope Daryl's right, and I hope it's a new day for free speech. I really do. We'll see. We'll see. I really do hope that they're right. I'm not sure if they're right or not, but I hope that they are. And this is something that I can't really talk about why I think it's happening, but we're going to show this, and it's just absolutely, it's got to be why it's happening. And I know that some of you are going to cringe, but I can't say why it's happening because we're on YouTube. We're trying to be evangelistic. We're trying to reach out. But Cynthia showed me this. And, I mean, this is, I guess it's a basketball game, right? And their team won or whatever, but I'm not even going to play the sound because you don't need it. But the people are coming out of the stands. Watch. Doom, 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 doom. How many freaking times does somebody have to fall before somebody looks up and says, oh, we might. Can you believe this? What is wrong with these people? I have a theory of what's wrong with these people. They've all got something, and it's causing them to not be very smart. And then you notice they don't even help each other. Down they go, one after the other. How many times can you keep falling when people are falling right in front of you? Oh, it is. And it just goes on and on, ladies and gentlemen. It's been going on for a minute, and they're still going down. How do you explain this? It's like The Walking Dead. Boom, boom, boom. Look at this. The young, the old, the black, the white, the fat, the skinny. Boom. Oh, there's one that finally made it. And look at this guy with the mask. He's trying to point things out. When the guy with the mask is pointing things out, you know you're in trouble. And he over here is, dude, just videotaping it. This is probably his TikTok, but look at this. Over and over and over. Wow, folks. What the heck is going on? I have an opinion, but I can't share it. Not here. Not now. Are you kidding me, folks? Are you kidding me? And in a thing that is just, I don't know how this could possibly be, because we all know that what we're having to get is safe and it's effective. We know it is. But yet, how the heck does this man, he looks kind of fit to me. He looks pretty fit. He looks pretty fit. 44-year-old pro bodybuilder drops dead of a heart attack on the treadmill. And guess what he did recently? Guess what he did recently? Like within the last couple of weeks. Folks, we can't say it, but I think you know what I'm talking about. And before we bring in our guests, let me remind you, if you have done some things that you wish you hadn't have done, if you put some things in your body that you wish you hadn't put in your body, and I'm not talking about the bad date that you had this weekend. Well, maybe it might actually apply. Go to jeffreydaugherty.com, click on the nanosoma button. It optimizes your body to heal and cleanse itself, whatever's not supposed to be in there. If you take nanosoma, it optimizes your body to knock it out of there. Jama or Pyramid 7 said what I can't say, and don't say it out loud. So there you go, folks. Nanosoma will help you, and don't give up hope. I know you made a bad error in judgment, but please get the nanosoma. Get yourself in shape. We need you. And tonight we have with us Courtenay Turner. Courtenay is a speaker, a personal trainer, a mindset coach. She's a pundit. She's an aerial performer. Now, have you ever seen an aerial performer on YouTube before? Pretty interesting. She's also an actress. I had the opportunity to meet her at the Let's Go Brandon rally down in Florida just recently. Courtenay Turner, it was a pleasure to meet you there, and it's a pleasure to have you on the show tonight. You got to start with the aerial performer stuff. Tell us about that.
Likewise, it's a pleasure to be here, and it was so nice meeting you. So aerial, like I do really all of them. I do trapeze, lyra. Lyra is like the big hoop in the air. Yeah. Silks, which is the two fabrics, and then sling, which is a fabric that's a loop.
Yep.
And what else is there? Rope, which is called cordelice, which means straight rope in French, and pole.
Hey, yeah. Weird tie-in, Courtenay Turner. Weird tie-in. I lived in Vegas for about 4 years.
When I do the performances, I usually do like a motivational speech with it, and I share my personal story. And the performance is supposed to show people what is possible when nobody said it would be, because when I was born, they told my mom the best she could hope was to find a nice institution for me to spend my life. So that's kind of the performance is supposed to inspire,
awesome.
To defeat the odds.
Here's our weird tie-in. I lived in Vegas for about 4 or 5 years, and I used to play hockey. I was a goalie, and I used to play on Wednesday nights, Wednesday during the day actually, with all of the performers from Cirque du Soleil.
Really?
There were a lot of them Russians, and man, could they play hockey, but there was many of them that did, the same kind of stuff that you do.
Oh, wow. That's so really funny.
Now, will you please give us the thumbnail version of your story? It sounds very inspirational, and I'm so glad to hear about it. I've read it, but please share it with our audience.
So my mom had germ measles during first trimester of pregnancy. So I was born with congenital rubella. And they had read the titer as being 112. The doctor was dyslexic. The titer was actually 121. If the doctor had read it correctly, they would have advised my mom to have an abortion. So when we finally confirmed what was causing all the ailments, then my parents actually sued, and it was considered a wrongful birth case. So when
Wow.
I was born with all sorts of complications. I'm unilaterally blind, so I'm blind in my left eye. I had cataract surgery when I was 3 months old. I am bilaterally hearing impaired. I didn't get hearing aids till I was almost 6 years old. I learned how to speak by reading lips. I had heart surgery when I was a year old. I was born with hypotonic limbs. So that's the opposite of hypertrophy, like the opposite of the guy you showed the picture of. Like my muscles wouldn't develop. It affected my limbs. I had fine graphic motor impairment, stunted growth, asymmetrical bone development. So they told my mom the best she could hope was to find a nice institution for me to spend my life.
And yet you are, I know it's cliche, but you're soaring through the air, the greatest of ease. You're the girl on the flying trapeze, even though you don't do trapeze.
Right. Yeah, I've done trapeze. It's not the one that I've done. The flying trapeze is not the one that I do, most often, but I have done flying trapeze.
Now, have you ever worked with a professional troupe?
No. Usually it's just, I've done a lot of like performances and then I've done performances with speeches, but.
Now you do something I read on, I just closed your website, but it's called Move. Can you talk to us about that?
So Move, you mean my show WIM, What is Movement?
What is movement? Yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So WIM is a show where we explore ways that movement helps people to heal emotionally, mentally, physically, and spiritually. Because I personally believe that, there's a lot of things that went into my overcoming and my healing, but I really believe that movement was a huge part of it because I don't have motion parallax. I obviously don't have strong vestibular sense. So all of these impairments and challenges were strengthened by expanding my kinesphere and my proprioception. And movement was a huge part of that. And I also like to, most people, I don't really have to sell them on how beneficial movement is for the physiological well-being, or even emotional well-being. But what I think a lot of people overlook is kind of the philosophical aspect of movement. And I talk about movement being a metaphor for life and using your physical training as a teacher to overcome adversity. Because I think it's a really great tool for people. It's very, very tangible. And a lot of times in life when we can't always see the trajectory, and when we're making progress, we don't necessarily know what's working, what's not working. But with movement, it's a really tangible teacher. So I think that's something people should use more often.
Absolutely. And a fellow that we both met and enjoyed, I'm sure, at the event was Jason Cisneros. He gave the speech about human trafficking.
Mm-hmm.
And he is a good friend of Tony Robbins. And Tony Robbins, like myself, is a master practitioner in neuro-linguistic programming. And one of the most important things is if you want to change your physiology, or if you want to change your state, your mental state, your emotional state, your spiritual state, the number one thing, as Courtenay Turner would tell you, is change your physiology. Start moving. And about 18 months ago, I weighed about 70 pounds more than I do right now.
Wow.
And I started moving, and now I dropped below 200 pounds for the first time since the 90s. So I'm feeling pretty good about that.
That's amazing. Congratulations.
It's fun. A lot of great people at that event, weren't there?
I'm sorry, say that again?
There was a lot of great people at that event, weren't there?
There were. It was an awesome event. Yeah.
And, I've been to a few of them, Courtenay. I don't know how many you've been to, but I think that Paimon put on the most first-class event that I've ever seen, from the food to the presentation to giving the awards to the speakers. He didn't miss a thing. It was absolutely fantastic from start to finish.
I concur. And what I love about it is it was really first class, and yet it still felt really intimate. And
it did.
You don't see that all the time. Yeah.
And I was really impressed by the vendors area. It wasn't just your normal, walk down there and get hawked by everybody. It was people, you could tell they were dedicated. You could tell they were real. It was set up. It was just a wonderful, wonderful event. It really was.
Yeah. And everybody really seemed to be interested in getting to know everyone else and learning what they're about and what they have to offer.
They did. Now, Courtenay, we hadn't really talked too much at the event. We sat down at a dinner table. I don't know, what is there, 15 or 12, 15 people at those tables?
Yes.
And I opened my big mouth and said some things. And I was very surprised to hear you say, "Oh, yeah." And I thought, whoa. But anyway, we don't want to name any names necessarily, but you and I were part of a very small cadre of people that noticed some really weird things happening that event. It kind of was throughout the event, but not to name any names, but when Stu Peters gave his talk, it really kind of came to a crescendo. I know what I experienced. What did you experience? Please take us through it, what you were feeling, what you were thinking, and kind of what your mind did when I mentioned something at the dinner table.
Well, I'll back up a little bit because it came off the heels of my going to AFPAC. And yeah, so I went to CPAC and then I also went to AFPAC because I was very curious and they were both in the same place. And so, might as well check it out. And I will just say that I had actually really high hopes for AFPAC. I thought, a lot of things they were trying to do, I was really encouraged by. And then I got there and the main takeaway that I felt was that they seemed to be conveying this message that America First, which is what AFPAC stands for, right? That's their name, is synonymous with Christianity first. And I fundamentally disagree with this. I think, first of all, from a business standpoint, I don't think it's very smart. You're now alienating a whole bunch of patriots who would really be in your camp, But
are we really patriots, Courtney? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I think people who might really be America first, right? And maybe share that sentiment. You've now alienated a bunch of them because they might not be Christians. But moreover, I actually just think it's wrong because one of the things they kept talking about was, the First Amendment, freedom of speech. And while the First Amendment encompasses freedom of speech, it is not just solely freedom of speech. It's actually freedom of religion. It's a bunch of other things like the freedom to, the right to assemble, peaceable assembly, to redress grievances of the government. It's not just freedom of speech, but freedom of speech, I actually think is a derivative of freedom of religion. And freedom of religion is really freedom of consciousness. And I think that was something that was very important to our founders. They came here first and foremost for freedom of religion. They were being persecuted. So I think you really kind of miss the First Amendment if that's where you go. If you go to, this is about Christianity first. I'm all for people having their faith. I tend to, I think on principles, I'm aligned with a lot of Christians. I really support them. I absolutely think that they should, be, they should have their faith. They should promote it, to teach it to their children. They should stand by their conviction. But that doesn't mean that it's synonymous with America First. And then we went to this event, and when Stu spoke, I kind of felt that sentiment again. And I actually heard a bunch of people saying things that kind of reverberated that. And I've just noticed this trend, and it is kind of, I think it's problematic. And I think it's antithetical to what the founders would have wanted. We're not a theocracy, and we were never intended to be a theocracy.
Absolutely. I actually was in there, and when he said, and people that don't love Jesus can go straight to hell, the place exploded, a standing ovation. I took out my phone. I was not standing, and I texted my wife, and I said, this just got a little scary.
Yeah.
And it did. But the funny thing was, Courtney, I had more to be worried about than you did, because you are a person of the Jewish faith, and all of those Christians there, they've got to bless you or they'll get cursed. So you'd have been in better shape than me.
Although I don't know, because lately I've been hearing all about, the Jew conspiracy, and I'm hearing it from Christians. All these Christians, and they always send it to me. I'm like, what am I, your token Jew that you have to send all this anti-Semitic material to because you think I'm going to support it? I'm not following. How does this make any sense at all? But I hear it a lot from Christians that, the evil Jews run the world and they need to be taken down. And, I really think that a lot of what they are buying into is a form of cognitive infiltration that has been designed to divide and conquer. Because
can you tell us what cognitive infiltration is? I'm sorry to.
Yeah, sure. So you have different groups of different beliefs that are kind of mainstream, and then you have maybe alternative views, but they're large in size. cognitive infiltration, and it stems from the Obama days, but I'll spare everybody all the history on it.
That's why I don't know what it is.
I'll spare everybody those details, but the Cliff Notes version is really just that they will go into these groups and throw out some disinformation. So this is not misinformation, it's disinformation. It's intended to get people to look way over there, and to start creating tensions and stoke up, I guess, discontention between groups. Yeah.
But I must say, after that speaker spoke, and unfortunately he was, pretty much gone from there. I didn't get a chance to talk to him, but I did talk to 10 of the speakers that were there. I had the honor of being the first one, and I talked to 10 other speakers, and they were all of them Christians. And of the 10 that I shared my feelings with, 8 of them were very supportive. In fact, Stanford Graham, the tall guy with the gray hair,
I actually just interviewed him. Yeah.
Just a brilliant gentleman. He really got upset when I explained to him. He goes, "You're right." And he said, and what was the word he said? The word he said was so perfect. I can't. It's inappropriate, he said. It's inappropriate. Now, 2 of the people were very much, well, have you made your decision for Christ, right? And the thing that I said to them was, and tell me if you felt this, I'm as America first as they get. I'm America first.
Yeah.
I'm a patriot. You're a patriot. But there was about, from my reckoning, there's 300 people there. There's about 40, 45 of us there that weren't Christians, but we were still America first. And the feeling that I get is, number one, we're second-class citizens, and I'm not even one that they have to bless or they're going to get cursed. So I'm a third-class citizen. But I really thought, Courtenay, if this ever came to kinetic warfare, I don't mind if I have to fight with Stu. I'm not going in front of him because I'm afraid he'll shoot me in the back.
Right.
Am I overreacting?
I'm sorry, what?
Am I overreacting?
No, I very much feel that. So I did a really long rant on my Instagram about this. I don't know if I put it up on the YouTube, but I did a long rant on Instagram, and I ended up writing an article about it because it bothered me so much after APAC and the CPAC. And I had done a podcast with James Lindsay a few weeks prior to that. And towards the end of it, that this portion of the podcast was not on YouTube, it's on my Rockfin channel, but I really thought he was going to cry. He was so upset, and he kept talking about this notion that there are no enemies to the right is a fallacy.
Oh, so much.
Pardon?
I'm just agreeing with you. Go ahead.
Yeah. So he was saying how, and he was really, really upset about it. And it reminded me of a few years back, I had heard Jordan Peterson talk about some of the same kind of sentiment. And I honestly really dismissed it. I'm like, why are we concerned about like 3 crazy people, right? It's they have no voice and they're kind of insignificant. And I really kind of dismissed it. And then when I heard James talk about it, I really felt for him. I had a lot of compassion for him because I could see he was really, really upset and really scared by the prospects of what this could mean because this group was growing. And then when I went to APAC, I really saw it firsthand. And I was really scared because it's almost like a cult. It's a very, it has that feeling of a cult mentality. And they do seem to be really closing the tent and very it feels almost vitriolic towards anybody who doesn't have the same belief system, and that is so antithetical to everything for which this nation stands. So it's very confusing to me, but it's also really worrisome.
Courtenay, would they prefer that we're not there?
I almost felt like some of them might. I don't know. I overheard, so at our dinner table, again, I won't mention any names, but somebody had made a comment, and it was actually about the Jews, and I corrected this person. I said,
I thought you were going to come across the table for a second there. And if I had known that you were an aerial performer, I would have been really worried.
Yeah. Well, I was really
what, maybe 5 feet, maybe 100 pounds, but I bet you if you get you wound up, it looked like you got a little fight in you.
Yeah. And I was really, I definitely got passionate, and this person was not happy at all about it. They felt like they were being pounced. But I told this person that they were wrong on their precepts. So you can have your thoughts and your feelings and all of that, but the idea of a lot of these theories about the Jews is actually just inaccurate, and it's based on tropes that were used in Nazi Germany, and they're being recycled now. And it's kind of mind-boggling because so much of what happened then is being, recycled now, and people just fall hook, line, and sinker as if it's the first time, and this is all new, and somehow this is they fall for the propaganda. I don't know. It's very, very disturbing. It was disturbing then. It's definitely disturbing now.
And we do indefinitely live in interesting times. And, I am in a position where, I was a Christian for 25, 30 years, saw the cracks in the foundation of big time religion. I'm not a Christian anymore, studied the American Revolution. And the fact of the matter is that 0.00% of the founding fathers were Christians. They were deists.
They were deists, yeah.
And they were against revelation from books and people. So if anything, they were kind of anti-Christian, but they're not anti-Christian. They were open for everybody to have their faith, but it should have nothing to do with the governing of the nation. So the lie and the trope, if you will, that this is a Christian nation could not be any more untrue. It's nonsense.
It's not true. I'll send you my article that I wrote, because I have all these quotes from the founding fathers really just saying exactly that. A lot of them were deists. Most of them were deists.
Right. Not all
of them were deists were with like Christian influence. They weren't necessarily Christian, but they had Christian influences in their deism. But really, and then some of them, were outside of that scope altogether. But what's really interesting about that is what it proves is that for them, what was so important was freedom of consciousness. It was the freedom to be able to carve and choose your own thought process and your own belief system and your worldview. That's what was so important to them. And that's what this land represented, the opportunity to be able to do that. And yeah, I mean, my religious and spiritual journey has taken lots of kind of twists and turns. I'm not somebody who has ever, I don't know that I ever will be a fan of organized religion. I just, I see so much corruption at the top of all religions, really. There are wonderful people, I think, in every religion, and there are some not so wonderful people in every religion. There's good and bad in everyone, but at the top tiers of a lot of the organized structures and institutions, I see a lot of corruption. And I just think, religion to me, religion is very different than faith or than beliefs or worldview. And to me, that's really personal. Nobody else can tell me what a relationship to the creator, for instance, should be, or how to have that relationship. That's my personal relationship, just as it would be for you, your personal relationship. So it's very odd that people think that that the government should have a say in that. That's just kind of mind-boggling to me.
Should we, as non-Christians, think that we can still work within the quote-unquote patriot movement and be able to accomplish any positivity?
Yeah, I mean, I think we need a bigger tent, not a smaller tent. That's what.
But how do we, as such a small minority, have an effect? Do we just be quiet and go along? Do we stand up and shout it from the rooftops? I'll tell you what, Courtney.
Yeah.
Oh boy, I just wonder what would have my wife said this to me, and I can't believe I didn't do it, because I was so shocked when he said, if you don't love Jesus, you can go straight to hell. I should have stood up and yelled, what the hell are you talking about? There's people here that aren't Christians. Yeah. What are you doing? What would have happened if I would have done that?
I think people would have stood up and had the discourse. I actually do. So I just went to an event in Tulsa, Oklahoma, with it was Clay Clark's event, a new media kind of event, and something like that actually happened. Someone made a speech, and it was very much about it was it was slightly different, but this was kind of about the problem of the Muslims, the Islams. And this man stood up, again, I'm not mentioning any names, but he stood up and he said that he was personally really offended by that. And he wishes that this person would have clarified that it was, extremist, not all Muslims. And so, right. And Clay handled it beautifully. He said, I love you. I love you. I think this is a private conversation and it's a conversation that should be had. I want all voices to be here. You are both, you can have your perspective, but I'm not in the business of shutting down or, demonizing or discrediting. He didn't use those words, but that's really what he was trying to say. And I thought that was great that he did stand up, because I was thinking the same thing. I mean, I'm obviously not Muslim, and I was offended by it. I was like, hold up. I don't know that, I think we can't just make like a statement, right?
I was so shocked. I was knocked aback. I didn't expect it. And I didn't expect the incredibly powerful standing ovation. And it set me back. And if I had it to do again, it's not many times that I'll do that, but it kind of segues us into a really good talk. You talk about there's a huge difference between Islamic extremists and honorable Muslims.
Sure.
What would you say to people that look at the United States of America, 2%, 3% maybe Jewish population, and then they look at the Biden cabinet and they see over 80% people that say they're Jewish. They look at the Trump cabinet before that, even a higher percentage of people that say they're Jewish. They look at the Federal Reserve and see that in the entire history of the Federal Reserve, there's only been one person that didn't claim to be Jewish. And if you go through all of the power structures, conservatively, you're about 80%, north of 80% of people that claim to be Jewish. And when people that are objective like me look, I can say 2%, 80%. Can you understand why we have some concern and why we raise it? And could you please address it?
Yeah, I absolutely understand why this theory exists. And I
would we agree that those numbers are actually facts? It's not theory. It's actually the way they break down as real numbers.
Yeah, I don't know that they're 100% accurate, but it's safe to say there are a lot of Jews, a lot of quote unquote Jews. I'll put them in air quotes.
And you made a statement at the table, and just earlier too. There's a difference between being a faithful, religious, committed, spiritual Jew, and then somebody that just says they're a Jew. And I'll shut up and let you talk.
Yeah, exactly. And that is exactly where I was going to go with this. I think, yes, it's safe to say that people who claim, Jew to be a Jew, who are in positions of power, but yeah, it's very different than being a religious, faithful Jew. And then there's also, so when you trace back a lot of what they're, going back to, when you talk about things like the Federal Reserve, the central bankers, now a lot of them were not actually Jews. They come from this line of Khazarians. And that was back in the 8th century, but they chose Judaism. So they could have any religion, they of the three they were choosing was Muslims, Christianity, and Judaism. And they chose Judaism as their cover specifically because the Jews could lend money. So the Muslim and Christian religion precludes them from being able to do so. And the Jews were allowed to lend money. And so they could be bankers. And so these Khazarians chose that as their religion. But that
to lend money with interest, right? To be more specific.
Exactly. But in no way does that make them Jewish, right? Like just because you have, yeah. So I think that's I think there's a lot of, there's a lot of possible explanations for what has happened there, but very few of these people are devout religious Jews. So I feel like it's almost it's a bad representation, and it's not fair to say that therefore there's some sort of a cabal that's running the show.
Why do you think Christianity is so, I want to use the term in bed with, but is so committed to the promotion and the absolute to the death devotion of the Zionist movement?
I think a lot of that's biblical. There's a lot of biblical references to, the Holy Land.
You find that odd?
Do I find that odd?
Hmm?
I'm not really sure what you mean. Like in what regard is it odd?
Well, I mean, the Christians say, we're Christians,
Mhm.
we're not Jewish,
Mhm.
but yet, if I thought I was going to be an attorney. If I was an attorney,
Mhm.
a prosecuting attorney, I think I could pretty much prove that Christians are Jewish by
They
their own words and by their own.
and they're bound in the same book.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I just think it's odd. I think it's odd. And again, I get back to the thing, and I know that, you kind of chuckled, and I did mean it as sort of a joke, but in reality, and thank you for the tip, I appreciate that, Dillinger. In reality, there's the Christians at that event, the events like it.
Mhm.
You would be the token protected status, and me, I would have to worry about the tar, the feathers, the knives in the back, the bullets in the back. And it makes me profoundly uncomfortable. I love this movement. I want to be part of this movement, but I'm kind of at a loss as to how to proceed.
Well, I don't feel. I mean, I think we should all be protected because we all should be aligned in our. But I certainly don't feel protected. Because of this. Uh, because of this portrayal of the Zionist movement that you're speaking to, right? So I've heard so many Christians say that the Jews are that it's a Jewish cabal and that Zionism isn't real and it's evil.
You really hear that from Christians? Really, from Christians?
So,
Wow.
well, I don't think they're real Christians. They're not Christians who've actually read the Bible. And when I ask them, they haven't.
Courtney, I was a minister for 25 years. You'd be surprised how few Christians have ever really read the Bible. But anyway.
Right.
You'd be surprised how few preachers have read the Bible.
Fair enough. But most of these are just people who are, repeating stories that they've, sound bites that they've heard. And so I don't in any way feel protected. I will just say that. I've heard so much backlash. And I really, like I said, I do think it's cognitive infiltration. I think it's designed to turn the Christians against the Jews. I think that is the purpose of it because they want to divide and conquer. That's,
I think you're worried about nothing, but I hear your point.
Yeah. So I think that, the interest is supposed to be, this is my personal belief. I feel that America, that was divine intervention to preserve the free will of humanity. That's just my personal belief.
I would have to agree with you.
Yeah. And I use the beekeeper analogy. I say, how they say when all the bees go, that humans will cease to exist.
Right.
But I see America as very similar to being a beekeeper because when America falls, so the world follows, and therefore it's incumbent upon Americans to preserve the free will of humanity. And I think that is really the crux of the battle. That's what we should be trying to fight for is free will, sovereignty, freedom of consciousness. That's what's at stake. That's really what's at stake. And if that's at stake, humanity is at stake. So this idea of, well, because you don't believe what I believe, therefore, we should turn against you. It makes no sense at all because that's antithetical to free will. So if you are a religious Christian, then it's not very Christian to scorn people for not sharing your beliefs,
right.
To force them to share your beliefs. That is not what, Christianity says. You can pray for them. You can try and educate them, whatever your belief guides you to do, whatever is on your heart to do. I would encourage you to do that. That is very different than scorning, shaming, and trying to force somebody into sharing your beliefs because that's antithetical to free will. And that if you believe that God endows you with free will, then why are you trying to take that away from people?
Absolutely. This event was in Florida, and this is an interesting question. I've had an opportunity to ask anyone that. In the state of Florida, it is actually literally against the law to say anything bad or disagree with any of the policies of the nation of Israel. How do you feel about that, both as a Jewish person and as an American?
I actually don't support it. I mean, I'm probably going to have a lot of people who are not happy with me for saying it, but I wouldn't necessarily like it. I don't really like people saying, bad things about anybody, really, unless they've really earned it, But
lovely mindset.
Have the right to, I'm sorry.
That's a lovely mindset.
Yeah, I mean, I think people should have the right to say whatever they want to say. I mean, I don't have to like it. But that's what freedom of speech actually really means. It means you could say something not nice about me, and I'm not going to be happy about it. I don't have to like it. I don't have to, be nice in return, But,
Right.
What did Voltaire say? I may not like what you have to say, but I defend your right to say it. And
Absolutely.
yeah.
And interestingly enough, if there's anybody really Voltaire would be up in the higher echelon of people that are hated by Christianity. It's very, very interesting.
That
Very,
is
very
really
interesting. So if they made Courtenay Turner Empress of the World tomorrow, what would be your first act?
My first act?
As Empress of the World. Empress Courtenay, what would you do first?
I would make the world have, I think freedom of speech would be really kind of first and foremost for the world. Everybody should be able to have free discourse and freedom to choose to believe what they wish to believe.
I like that.
I think that's really where things stem from, because from there, that's where control trickles down, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, as a fellow podcaster, can I ask you a personal question to maybe try to aid some of my personal development?
Yeah, sure.
And we're talking about freedom of speech.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're a podcaster and you're talking about freedom of speech, you have to look at the chat rooms.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got the Rockfin chat room and the Twitter chat room and the Twitch chat room and the YouTube chat room. And people sometimes, and just coincidentally, probably 99% of the time, it's Christian people, whatever that means, say some of the most awful, horrible, rotten, nasty things. Sometimes, Courtenay, I see it, and my wife says I get triggered, I react. Number one, does blocking or removing people's comments from a chat room constitute limiting of free speech? And what would you just give me as a personal advice in this little area that I struggle with?
So I have had people leave some not so nice comments, and I've had people say that I should take them down. And I haven't, because I feel like people should I'm not saying I like it,
right?
But I do really support free speech. And as long as it's not obviously dangerous and threatening, but I try to encourage, that this is an environment of fruitful discourse. So I really think for people to just be mean and nasty for the sake of it is really kind of, it's not productive. It doesn't help anybody. And it says a lot about that person. So to me, that's just not beneficial at all. But if people are having discourse and it's where they don't agree and they're voicing opinions or, presenting evidence that may be contrary to one another, I actually really support that. I don't have to agree. I've had lots of people on my podcast who I don't necessarily agree with it. I'm not going to agree with 100% of everything anybody says anyway. I mean, they're not inside my head. So, that's never possible.
I don't even agree with what I used to say.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, things I thought a year ago are very different now. I definitely have had a lot of shift in perspective. Definitely in the past few years, even religiously, I've had major shifts. So, and that's part of
if I say I believe in free speech, I should pretty much let people say what they want to say in the chat room. Is that kind of your take?
Yeah, and I think that I'm not going to tell you what you should or shouldn't.
No, I understand. I'm opening myself up to your
yeah.
Your
but I think that if it really bothers you, then perhaps don't look at it. That's the only. Yeah,
maybe. I gotta look at it. I've got to see it.
Yeah, but maybe just don't look at the comments and let it be and let them do their thing. Yeah.
But here's another thing. Sometimes, Courtenay, I have actually gotten a little angry with people, and some people have used the word blast people. And the weirdest thing is, in fact, some of my producers, Courtenay, they say, and some of the people, that's great stuff. You got to do more of it. What is that all about?
Do more of what?
Blasting people. You gotta hit some people. You gotta rant some people. You gotta blow some people out of the water. People love it.
People love like the cat fights, right? I mean, that's why reality television is so popular. People like drama. They Yeah, they feed off of it. I don't really like drama. I prefer to have it out of my life. I liked it when I was an actress. I liked it on stage in front of the camera. I keep it there. In my actual life, I'm really not interested in drama. Yeah.
I go back to that night around the dinner table. That was close to drama.
It was close to drama.
Hit your fuse. I'm like, whoa. Listen, I could have this girl on the show. And
well, if I'm passionate, I'm not going to back down.
Mm-hmm. And the funny thing was, she didn't either, and you ended up having a pretty decent conversation.
We did, yeah, and it ended up being a pretty mutually respectful discourse. After we didn't agree at all, and we still don't.
Yeah, and I have to confess, was there because she's a follower and subscriber of our channel, so I have to take some blame. Yeah,
no, I mean we've actually been in contact since, and there was no hard feelings. We just really don't agree. And she has very different kind of views on, definitely on who Jews are and where they come from and what they're doing in the world. And
so Courtenay Turner, overall, are you scale of 1 to 10 or 0 being you're ready to run, you're scared to death, 10 it's rainbows and unicorns? Where are you on the optimism scale as far as our world, our country today, and where we're going?
Ooh, so about it kind of bifurcates. I would say in the immediate future, I'm at kind of like a 4, but in the long term, I'm actually at maybe 8. I have pretty high hopes for things to work out in the long run, but I think it's going to get worse before it gets better.
And, we have a lot of different people on this show. Believe it or not, you're not the first Jewish person on this show. We have Black people, Islamic people. We've had great Quranic scholar on the show. And I'm of the opinion that there's a group out there, and we don't even have to say who they are. We don't even have to believe we know exactly who they are. But there's a group and a force out there that hates humanity.
Oh, and there is. Absolutely.
And right now, red, yellow, black, white, Jewish, Abrahamic, Jewish, Christian, Muslim, American Indian, atheist, all of us that love freedom need to put that stuff aside, join together, win the battle to take back our republic. And Courtenay, we get, it's an international program, I get calls from countries all over the world. If you guys fall in America, we're done. We need to join together, take this country back, take this republic back. Once we're safe, then we can debate the theology.
Yeah, and I will say, certainly my heritage, Judaism, and I feel, I was actually having this conversation with somebody recently that I've only recently started to even explore kind of a more formal kind of religious beliefs. I've always had more of my own personal, and as I said, I'm probably never going to be like a hardcore organized religion person because that's just not, it doesn't resonate for me at all. But, for me, it is actually really, really personal, and it's really not traditional. But what I do love is I say that I feel like because that is my heritage and it's like 100% my heritage, I do feel almost like a sentimental kind of allegiance to it. There is also, they were survivors, and I'm really proud of that we survived, and they were one of the most persecuted people in the world.
And you should be proud of your heritage. You have every right to be proud of your heritage, and you should be supported in your pride for your heritage. But sometimes white guys like me, we feel like we don't have that privilege anymore today.
Right, I know, and everybody should have that privilege. Everybody should be able to be proud of their heritage, and everybody should simultaneously be able to carve out their own belief system regardless of their heritage.
Absolutely.
Those two can coincide, and that's what it means to fundamentally be human. That really is what it means to be human. And I think we have been so disconnected from what it means to be human. And that's really sad. And you're right, we have people who truly do not love or support humanity, and that's why they're foisting the transhuman agenda.
But Courtenay Turner, I am 100% on your side. I have your back as a woman, as a Jewish person, and I would fight with you shoulder to shoulder and defend with my life your right to your sovereignty and your divinity and your freedom of expression. And I would take a bullet for you and we are brother and sister in this fight. And I appreciate you so much coming on. And please, go ahead and respond to that if you would, and give us information on where we can find you and learn about your work.
Thank you. And thank you so much for having me. And the feeling is mutual. Absolutely. And I think we need a whole lot more of that. So much more. We are all, science has proven that we're descendants of one man and one woman. We are literally brother and sister. So I think there needs to be a lot more support of, right? If you do support the 10 Commandments, it says love thy neighbor. If nothing else, we should see more.
It's funny, Courtney, the greatest commandment, Jesus said supposedly that the greatest commandment, the way that you'll know that you're really a Christian, is because you love one another. Mm-hmm. But it seems like the greatest commandment to most of the people that we saw was convert one another.
I know. Yeah. And that is problematic. Yeah. So where can you find me? I am all over the place. I have the Courtenay Turner podcast, and that is on every platform possible. I was recently suspended from YouTube, but I'm back on. So I released my 100th episode, and that's on YouTube, Courtenay Turner podcast, and Rockfin, the Courtenay Turner podcast. I spell my name slightly differently. It's like Courtenay Turner. So I'm on Rockfin, BitChute, Rumble, Odyssey, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and I have CourtenayTurner.com website. It is in the process of being redone. So what I have is still up there, but my new one should be up and ready to go in, I think, a few weeks. It's coming pretty soon. So I also have a show called WIM, What is Movement, that we talked about. And right now that's also on YouTube. And I have a new show that we have just done 2 episodes, and we're going to do kind of like a 3-part pilot, and we'll see where that goes. But it's called The Right Voices, and it's like a counter to The View.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Please keep me in the loop on that. That's fantastic.
I will.
Courtenay, it's been lovely to have you here tonight. Right. I hope that we can talk to you again. And it's so refreshing to be around people with different ideas and different backgrounds. And that's how we learn and how we grow. And there's a lot of people that think that eventually the races are going to have to live separately. I sure hope not, because I love different people, and I love experiencing and growing and finding out there's other ways than the way I think are right. And
I want to say something just in response to that. So right now in schools, they're really pushing that kids shouldn't read things that are from cultures that are different from theirs. And first of all, they're not reading much at all. They're watching videos and whatnot. That's just devastating in of itself. But the fact that they can't, that they're, discouraging reading about cultures that are different from theirs. For me, growing up, that was what I loved most about reading, was that it took me to time periods and cultures and, places that I could never go otherwise. And my imagination through the text would take me there. That's what was beautiful about reading. And they're robbing these kids of that opportunity. It's really, really devastating to me.
Courtenay Turner, I love your work. You're a lovely human. You're a great individual. You're an inspiration to many. And it's been an honor and a privilege to have you here with us tonight.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me.
You're very welcome. We hope to see you again. That's Courtenay Turner, CourtenayTurner.com. And so happy to have her here tonight. Different views, different perspectives. And you know what? That's all right. That's all right. That was fun, wasn't it? Let's take a quick musical break, and we'll be back right after this. We'll go into another hour of deprogramming. Before we do, let me remind you that focused life force energy, it sends high consciousness right to your home, right to your phone on demand. And now it's even more important because I believe they have the top EMF mitigation product out there as well. Don't believe me? Well, guess what? You can get 1 month for free. Just go to jeffreydaugherty.com, hit the FLFE button. You can get 15 days free on your phone, 15 days free on your home, and you decide for yourself if it's worth it. I think you might be very, very surprised. I'll be right back. We're going to talk about the American Holocaust, some stuff that you have never heard before unless you've listened to this show for a few years. It's going to get really interesting. CourtenayTurner.com. Find her on Rockfin, our go-to platform as well. And I'm Jeffrey Daugherty, the Christian whistleblower. I am your mailman. Tonight, Courtenay brought you a special delivery, and I hope that you will read it and take it to heart. We'll be right back in a few moments with more Late Night in the Heartland. That was fun. That was fun. I really enjoyed Courtenay Turner. I think she had some really good things to say. Of course, we didn't agree with everything she said. She didn't agree with everything I said. That's called a conversation. That's called being a human. I even let her say the N-word. Didn't even get upset. We are so glad to have you with us here tonight. Interesting stuff. Interesting stuff. That could have gone badly if Courtenay wasn't as intelligent and gracious and honest a person as she is. So I really appreciate her being here tonight. And we're going to go ahead and go in now. We're going to rush in where angels fear to tread, but most angels are archons anyway. So what we're going to do is get into our deprogram, and yeah, let's go ahead and stir it up. Let's go ahead and stir it up. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, cousins of all ages. Let me get into this a little bit. We'll open up the phone lines. I should have opened them up with Courtenay, but we just got so engrossed in what we were talking about that, well, just didn't think about it. So, whoops, this is the wrong deprogram. It's a great deprogram, but that's not the one I need. We got something else planned for tonight. Where's that American Holocaust? Here it is. Let's jump into this one, ladies and gentlemen. I think you're going to enjoy it. We were talking with Courtenay about wrath. Christian is thy name. We saw it firsthand down there in Brandon. And I just during the break, I went and talked to Cynthia, and I really feel badly that I didn't jump up. But I was shocked. I was really shocked and appalled. Shocked and appalled when I heard, if you don't love Jesus, you can go straight to hell. And the place erupted. I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. Not many times I'm taken without words, but that was one of them, and I missed an opportunity to make a difference. I apologize for that, and we won't let that happen again. This is the Courtenay Turner podcast logo. It's very nice. And Wrath, my name is Christian. Let's move forward and talk about some other stuff like I effing told you so. Cynthia backing me up. I did text her. I said, this just got scary. I might be in the wrong place. Something like that. But anyway, let's talk about this. I effing told you so. There is a Khazarian GOP, that's Republican, Khazarian GOP Senate candidate Josh Mandel is running a campaign through Christian churches. He's a Khazarian candidate who makes no secret of his faith, who is centering his campaign around evangelical churches as he tries to win over religious conservative voters. We're blowing up the playbook, he says. I'm sidestepping all of the Republican Party groups, and instead I'm running a campaign through churches. Wow. Mandel's campaign is steeped in Christianity, even though he is Khazarian. His website features a picture of a cross and an American flag. If you don't believe me, watch this. Let me show you. What's his name again? Josh Mandel. Josh Mandel. Boom. I'll show you the website. And it's like, really? Very interesting. Knowing his background, that this is his website. Now, we do have to give him credit. He's a Marine. So I'm not saying he's a bad guy. I'm just saying it's really interesting what he's doing. And I effing told you so. He's in Ohio. He's running for Senate. And yeah, he's pro-God. And he's got on this site the very shirt that I'm wearing tonight. Isn't that ironic? And he's pro-Trump. And I'm going to talk a little bit at some point about this symbol right here, this gesture. Pro-God, pro-gun, and pro-Trump. So we're not just making stuff up, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, not in any way, shape, or form. So Mandel is running his campaign exclusively through Christian churches. All his events are at evangelical Christian churches. That's odd. He pledges to make decisions in Washington with the Bible in one hand and the Constitution in the other. Most of his campaign events are at evangelical churches. He's the grandson of Holocaust survivors. We've shared about, we'll share more about looking at that objectively. He was an attendee of B'nai B'rith Perlman summer camp. B'nai B'rith, it's basically the Jewish KKK. Can I say that? Well, I just did. He was married in Israel. His children are enrolled in an Orthodox day school where they study Torah, and I don't know if it's Talmud or not, but half the day. Very interesting. Very interesting. And he describes himself as a proud Jew. That's his words. He dismisses those, including some GOP rivals, who've portrayed him as insincere in his emphasis of conservative Christian values. His alliance is part of a broader shift in U.S. politics, with Republicans like President Donald Trump working to win over conservative Christians by aligning themselves with pro-Israel policies, Zionism, like we were just talking with Courtenay about. Jewish groups have banded with white evangelical Protestants who are more likely than Jews to favor strong U.S. support for Israel. Did you hear that? White evangelical Protestants are more likely than even Jews to favor strong U.S. support for Israel. That's crazy. Mandel sees no contradiction between his faith and his campaign approaches, nor should he. Because when he goes into Christian churches, he's basically just going into another branch of Jewish church. I mean, I think even Courtenay said, yeah, it's the same book. We talked the other night, there's supposedly 12 apostles, but you had Paul 13. All 13 of them were Khazarian. All writers of the 66 books of the Bible, Khazarian. Jesus, Khazarian. So Mandel's right. There is no contradiction between his faith and his campaigning at evangelical Christian churches because it's just a different denomination of his church. At his events, the boyish Marine veteran often introduces himself by saying it was courageous Christians that sheltered his grandmother during that, saving her life. He explains when it comes to support for Israel, he has more in common with evangelical Christians than he does with liberal Jews. Amazing. Amazing. And I told you this was coming. From my perspective, he says, I'm a proud Jew, a proud Marine, and a proud American. And when I look at the U.S.-Israel relationship, I think the best friends that the U.S.-Israel relationship in America are evangelical Christians. Wow. Stephanie Martin, professor of communications at Southern Methodist, said Mandel's embrace of Christianity may serve to neutralize worries among Republicans about his Jewishness in a country where anti-Semitism is still a potent force. I don't even like to use that word because it's a nonsensical word. And just to be against Israel, just to be against policies of Habbatists, and just to be against some of the atrocities are not anti-Semitism, it's just anti-wrongism. But anyway, that's not what we're here to talk about tonight. And he talks about the Judeo-Christian bedrock of America. And he's right, but he's wrong. Courtenay and I talked about it, I think very brilliantly so, that this was not founded as a Christian nation, but yet there's this founders' rhetoric that it was. It's a kind of narrative that positions evangelicals as the rightful heirs and rightful defenders of authentic American values, which is absolute nonsense. Absolute nonsense. It's simply not true. It's a very smart way to orient around a shared understanding of the founders' narrative and what it means to have a traditional outlook on what the country means. She noted that the vision leaves little room for versions of history that aren't white, patriarchal, and Christian. Well, she's at least right about the versions that are not patriarchal and Christian. She might not be true about the right, because right is not so right. White is not so right anymore in this country. We are experiencing and we're understanding and experiencing that, I think, to a greater degree. But Yoel Mayerfield, a longtime supporter, and interesting that his biggest supporters are from a suburb with the highest Jewish population per capita outside of the country of Israel. Isn't that interesting? He's finding synergy by running it through the churches and being embraced by the Christian churches. Wow, craziness. I'll go ahead and take this call. It's Late Night in the Heartland. You're live with Jeffrey Daugherty.
Hi, Jeff. It's John in Tulsa.
Hey, what's up, John?
Well, I wanted to tell you, it's kind of along what you're talking here. I watched a video, a debate between Pastor Stanley Syoberg versus Sheikh Ahmed Diat, last name. And it amazes me how the Jewish people, or the rabbis, let's put it that way, and the Muslims know the Bible better than these guys, these ministers.
Isn't that something?
And he was what the pastor was doing was going out and doing miracles and getting all these people to accept Jesus, doing miracles on the stage, you know, like kind of like Oral Roberts, some of those guys.
Kind of like I used to do.
Yeah, well, yeah, kind of, yeah, but And I know they believe in it, and I know they believe they're performing miracles. I'm not saying they're not sincere about it, but the Muslim guy, he says, well, it says right there in your Bible that when Jesus comes back, that he's going to say, haven't you done wonderful miracles in my name? And he says, depart from me, you wicked ones. I don't want nothing to do with you.
Yep. You're right, John.
And I saw Toby Singer do the same thing with the Christians and debating them. And he quotes chapter and verse. He knows the New Testament better than most of the pastors and most of the evangelists.
Wow. Thanks for sharing that, John. Great call, my friend.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care. It's Late Night in the Heartland. You're live with Jeffrey Daugherty.
Hey.
Joe Sapiens, what's on your mind?
I thought I would want to call up to say how inspirational quarantine is.
Thank you, and I agree.
With all that she's gone through, that, folks, is the kind of people that I look up to.
Absolutely.
Not the people who would stab another in the back.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel right that there are people that would do like that whole, if you know what I mean, you're usually kind of thing. And what we need is to stick together, hold the line, and stay focused on what kind of country we want, and that is to have a nation focused on the core principle of the Constitution. Stick with that.
Absolutely, Joe. Very, very well said. And as one of the founders said, if we don't hang together, we'll surely hang separately. And that's never been more true. But I talked about Mandel running because I'm telling you, folks, I effing told you there's no difference between Judaism and Christianity. And we got to tell the truth before we can understand the lies. And speaking of lies, let's talk about one of the most evil, wicked men that has ever stepped foot on the planet. His name is Dwight D. Eisenhower. And I want to talk about the American Holocaust. And I'm just wondering if I should stay on YouTube. We've all heard ceaselessly about a certain Holocaust, one that's mandatory teaching in our classrooms and a constant refrain across all Western media, but we've never heard of Dwight D. Eisenhower's American Holocaust. We've never heard of Dwight D. Eisenhower's butchery, and we're going to talk about it. It's Late Night in the Heartland. You're live with Jeffrey Daugherty.
Hey, Jeffrey, this is Super Galactic.
Yes,
that
sir.
was a good interview that you had with Courtenay Turner.
Thank you.
I was talking to my mama about that whole experience that you went through at that rally.
Yes, sir.
And told her about what Steve Peters was saying. And she's a Christian, but she did say that her being a true Christian like she is, she would never say something like that. She said she wouldn't allow her mind to go into a place like that and spew out those kind of words.
Well,
and
God bless your mama, because that's a good woman.
Yeah. And I also told her that I wanted to talk to our pastor about that, because that's what I'm starting to do. I'm wanting to find out how these local churches in my community, how do they feel about Steve Peters? Because I want to expose this guy. I don't think he's a true person like he says he is. If he's saying stuff like that, he don't have love in his heart.
Thanks for the call. I appreciate that very much. I agree with you. It sounds like it's a little judgmental, but sometimes you have to call a spade a spade. And I just think that, like my beautiful wife says, he's been through some stuff. He's got off of alcohol. I don't know if he's working a program or not, but he is teetering on the edge. And I shouldn't be mad at him. I should be pulling for him. And I hope he gets some help and gets his stuff together, because he's going to be like that song, He's Come Undone. He's just barely keeping it together. Let's talk about the American Holocaust. Let's talk about Dwight D. Eisenhower's butchery that we never hear about, and it must be exposed. The Forward, which is a Jewish newspaper, online newspaper, laments that this year's March of the Living may be the final one with living Holocaust survivors in attendance. Now, Nora Berman of The Forward is heading to Poland to walk alongside them on the historic route from Auschwitz to Birkenau and document their stories. It's a route that I have personally walked, and I think I'm going to be cautious rather than adventurous here and say goodbye to our YouTube audience. I will put the Rockfin link in to the chat room so you can come over and watch Rockfin. You can also watch Twitter. You can also watch Twitch. And we're also broadcasting live over Odyssey. So you can go to any of those places and watch. But we're going to go ahead and move the rest of the show over to Rockfin. We appreciate you for being here, seeking after truth. I salute you. We'll be back tomorrow night for our YouTube subscribers. And until then, I'm Jeffrey Daugherty. I am your mailman, Courtenay Turner, at CourtenayTurner.com. Brought you special delivery tonight. And we will see you all tomorrow. Thank you very much for being with us, YouTube. Just got to be cautious and do what we got to do, because we're going to get into some really deep truth. And I've been to Auschwitz myself. I've been to Birkenau myself. I've seen it all. I've been there, spent a whole day there. And they're lamenting that it might be the very last year that they have people who claim to be Holocaust survivors in attendance. I have a suggestion. Why don't we make this the first year that we actually mention the American Holocaust? How about that? Let's make this the first year that we mention the American Holocaust. And let's talk just a minute about this march over at Auschwitz. And they say it's going to be a smaller crowd because the annual Holocaust Remembrance Day trek through Poland's most infamous concentration camp last took place in 2019 and had 10,000 participants, including 70 people that claim to be Holocaust survivors. This year, after a pandemic-induced hiatus and with war raging in Ukraine, organizers only expect 2,000 people and only 8 alleged Holocaust survivors. The last survivors is the headline. With a heavy heart, said one of those 8 survivors, 91-year-old Eve Kugler, I pass responsibility for the remembrance of the Holocaust to members of the third generation. And listen to what she says. An estimated 50,000 survivors remain in the United States. I'll show you, Joe, in just a minute what I mean about the American Holocaust. They say in America, the 50,000 survivors remain in America, and they're over age 85. And none are planning to attend this year's march. Sounds like they're terrible people. She's lamenting this, but I started doing some numbers. I said I was going to put pen to paper, but I really didn't put pen to paper. I just got the calculator. And Nora, the deputy editor of Forward, said that she's deeply concerned about recent surveys showing Holocaust ignorance among her peers. One poll showed that 11% of millennials and members of Generation Z thought that the Khazars themselves were responsible for the Holocaust theory, and nearly half had seen false information about it on social media. Are they watching my program? How can we fulfill the mission of never forgetting the 6 million, she asked, without the testimony of the survivors? Can we go back for a minute to Eve's words, Ms. Kugler? Ms. Kugler claims that there's 50,000 survivors of the Holocaust in the United States and that they're over 85 years old. That makes sense because if you were a survivor of the Holocaust, it's been 77 years. It's been 77 years since the Holocaust, allegedly. 77 years since 1945 when the war ended. So the end of the war was 77 years ago. If there's 50,000 survivors in the United States that they're 85, so they had to be around 10 years old at the end of the war. Well, our guest, Mr. Rizzoli, the other night said that's a problem because we're told that all the children that went to Auschwitz were immediately taken and killed. But if there's still 50,000 survivors, they would have had to have been at the most like 10 years old when they were there at Auschwitz or at any of the camps. So if the children were separated and killed at the camps, then how are there still 50,000 survivors? Now, I also started doing the math. There's about 32 million people in the United States. Khazarian Mafia people are about 2%. Khazarians make up about 2% of the United States population. 7% of the United States population is over 85 years old. So 2% of that 7% that Eve said are over 85 equals just under 50,000 Khazarian people total in the United States, 44,800. So in order for dear Miss Kugler to be correct, every single Khazarian person in the United States would have had to have been a survivor of the camps, and they would have to find a couple 200 more people. Do you understand the problem? When people start throwing around numbers, there's only 50,000 survivors left. It's impossible for there to be 50,000 survivors left. If every single Khazarian person in the United States over 85 survived the camps, they'd still be 200 short. Nora, who is the writer for The Forward, who's lamenting the fact that people aren't believing in the Holocaust anymore, Nora, perhaps they're beginning to question the narrative because the numbers don't add up. And by the way, Nora, they never have. Now, some people will accuse me of what they call anti-S-ism. Since when did math become anti-anything except anti-ignorance? Since when did math become anti-anything other than anti-error? This is the thing that bothers me about the subject that Courtenay and I were talking about. When I can't get on YouTube, when I have to leave YouTube, I guess you're right, Dillinger. It's not 200 short because that would be 45,000. It's 2,200 short, isn't it? It's 5,200 short because 200 would make it to 45,000. Then you got to have 5,000 more. So you're right. It's 5,200 people short. I'm sure Eve is a nice lady, but people are beginning to question the narrative because the numbers don't add up, and they never have added up. And it doesn't make me anti-anything except anti-error, anti-ignorance, anti-lies to point it out. That's just the way it is, folks. But no one talks about Dwight D. Eisenhower's unmentioned $1.7 million. In 1944, Dwight D. Eisenhower wrote to his wife and he said, "God, I hate the Germans." Cynthia with the classic quote, "Math is racist." Thank you. I suggest that we give Eisenhower a new name. He should be forever known as the Butcher of Berlin, and I took this information from Rense.com. On March 10th, 1945, Dwight D. Eisenhower issued an order that was verified by his own initials on a cable of that date that the German prisoners of war were to be given a new designation, which was called Disarmed Energy Forces. And because of this new false designation of disarmed enemy forces, it allowed Eisenhower to skirt the laws of war, which demanded that all prisoners of war be fed and housed and clothed. So Eisenhower himself ordered, this, Joe, is the American Holocaust. Eisenhower himself ordered that these Germans did not fall under Geneva Convention rules and were not to be fed, were not to be given any water, were not to be given any medical attention, and were not to be given any latrines. They literally fenced off great areas of earth and stuffed German people in there. No bathrooms, no water, no food, no shelter, and left them there until they died. And the Red Cross was not allowed to inspect the camps. Eisenhower claimed they had no authority or jurisdiction. Do you know and do you understand, and if you don't, you're about to, the German so-called death camps, the German concentration camps, were regularly inspected by the American Red Cross. Regularly inspected by the American Red Cross. The Chancellor of Germany, Adolf Hitler, allowed the Red Cross in to inspect every single one of the facilities on German soil. And Dwight D. Eisenhower, who went on to be President of the United States, refused to allow the Red Cross to inspect his camps because they were extermination camps. As soon as the war was over, General George Patton simply turned his prisoners loose to fend for themselves and find their way home. Eisenhower was furious with him. Patton's untimely and curious death was a result of what he knew about these camps. Eisenhower, this is me, not Jeff Rentz, I'm saying out loud that Dwight D. Eisenhower personally ordered the death of General George S. Patton. Peter Worthington of the Ottawa Sun did his own research and reported in his column on September 12, 1989, it's hard to escape the conclusion that Dwight D. Eisenhower was a war criminal of epic proportions. His policy killed more Germans in peace than were killed in the European theater. Do you understand that? Dwight D. Eisenhower personally murdered more Germans than were killed during the war. For years, they blamed the 1.7 million missing German POWs and the Russian allies, and until now, no one dug too deeply. It was ordered by General Dwight D. Eisenhower, Supreme Allied Commander, who would become President Eisenhower. He is a murderer. Remember, in the photo of Ike's West Point yearbook, there was a picture. And I'm just reporting the news. Ike was called the terrible Swedish Jew. And by the way, he was next to last in his class. And during Cadet Eisenhower's time at West Point, he was summoned to the office of the headmaster and was asked some pointed questions. At the time, it was routine procedure to test a cadet's blood to ensure that they had white racial integrity. It's just the facts, it's the way it was. Apparently, there was a question of Eisenhower's racial lineage, and this was brought to Eisenhower's attention by the headmaster. And after discussion, Eisenhower admitted having a Jewish background. Yet he was allowed to remain at the academy in violation of the rules. You have to ask why. And wherever Eisenhower went during his military career, his Jewish background and secondary manifesting behavior was a concern to his fellow officers. During World War II, General Douglas MacArthur protested to his supporters in Washington when Eisenhower was a colonel, I believe, working under him, or a captain, I'm not sure which. He said that Eisenhower was incompetent and that he did not want Eisenhower on his staff. I believe he was a colonel at the time. In 1943, despite Douglas MacArthur's scathing rebuke, Eisenhower was promoted over 30 more experienced senior officers to give the 5-star general rank and be placed in charge of all U.S. forces in Europe. A man they knew was unqualified to be even a West Point cadet. And he went on to butcher 1.7 million Germans. Finally, the truth about Ike. He was a Zionist, a racist, and a slaughterer of innocents. He was always these things, and all anyone remembers is his famous quote to beware the military-industrial complex. Like this knowledge means that he was some type of a great prophet, when he was really part of the NWO and helped set the U.S. up for all that followed. The Zionist essence is evil, destructive, and self-destructive in Jeff Rentz's words, and I concur. It was a tool of the Zionist evil essence. Patton was keen to fight the Soviets. He kept some German units ready to move against the Soviets. And unsurprisingly, he was killed in a car crash, just like Lawrence of Arabia was conveniently bumped off in a similar manner for his similar views. It became known that the conditions in the POW camps in the American zone were identical everywhere. We could therefore safely conclude that it was by intent and by orders from the higher-ups to starve German prisoners of war, and the blame lies squarely on Dwight D. Eisenhower, the butcher of Berlin. Now, one thing that has to be said, George S. Patton had had enough. George S. Patton was going to quit the Army, foregoing his sizable pension, and he wrote that he was going to go back to the United States and start telling the truth. He sent his letter of resignation to Ike, and then all of a sudden, he got in a car wreck, broke his neck, was in the hospital, and I'm sure coincidentally, his wife would not leave his side, but she finally went down to get something to eat, and son of a gun, it was during that time that General George S. Patton died. Do you know his car wreck? He wasn't even going, some people say 10, 12 miles an hour. It was a hit. The great hero, well, the great man of honor, General George S. Patton, was one of the 1.7 million murdered by Dwight D. Eisenhower. A filthy, disgusting, horrible individual who should be exhumed and given a traitor's, I don't know what you could do to an exhumed body, throw it in a trash pit. He's a terrible person. Just an awful thing, and people need to know about it. That's why we talked about it tonight. I know that there's food plants that are burning, and there's two ways to look at this. Number one, it's Communist Warfare 101. They always want to have famine and hunger. That's the way it goes. At least 16 fires have broken out at food processing plants, impacting the nation's supply of beef and poultry. Again, it's at meat. It's aimed at meat. I wonder why. There's been an outbreak of fires in food processing facilities across the nation in the last 6 months. And as a result, food prices are soaring. Supply chains are stressed to their limits. The fires began showing up regularly in the news after a fire closed a Tyson's meat processing plant, in Kansas. The location was a primary beef processing location for the company and the U.S. supply chain, providing about 6% of U.S. beef. Yeah, there's a lot of places out there that process, but still, it's not good. 16 fires nationwide, exclusively aimed at meat. Hunger and famine are always communist tactic number one. Just like Ike. Hunger and famine. And do you know, and this is in another show I'll talk about this week, did you know that there's actually some Q-tards? And I think these people really are retarded. They have to be retarded. These are Q-tards because they want to target meat, Joe. They don't want us to eat meat because meat is good for you. These Q-tards are actually saying that these are the good guys destroying the food. The good guys destroying the food. And they're destroying the food. Why? You guessed it. They're destroying the food because, and I'm not making this up, they're destroying the food because it's got snake venom in it. The stupidity strikes again. Come on, guys. Come on, guys. Wake up and realize you're being played for fools. Wrath thy name is Christian, we heard from Courtenay Turner. You heard about the American Holocaust, the horrible things that we did. And yet no one mentions it. No one talks about it. And it's a damn shame. And we need more people to begin to talk about these things. More people to begin to expound upon these things. Because these are the lies that must be uncovered for us to be able to destroy this nonsense and start again. I'm almost convinced that it's over. It's over. We're not going to save this mess. We're not. We just need to get on with the destruction and do it right the next time. Get on with the destruction and do it right the next time. I think there's something here that I can use that I want to show you because we have a few minutes left. Where is that? Somebody sent me a really good meme. Wonder if I can find it real quickly. It's very powerful. Talking about gestures you can make and gestures you can't make. You know, there's some gestures, if you make them, they're bad. And you're a horrible person if you do it. And then there's some gestures that really show that you're bad and that you're a horrible person if you do it. But they are welcomed, encouraged, and they are actually supported. Let me see if I can't find an example of that. And when you see it, it's just striking. It's just striking. And I want to thank Corey, who has become part of the LifeWave family. And I'm telling you, man, I've got the LifeWave glutathione patch on my back of my neck right now. They make patches for pain. They make patches for appetite control. They make patches for just about everything. And they're amazing. You need to go to jeffreydaugherty.com, click on the LifeWave button, a fantastic website, and it'll change your life. It'll change your life. It's Late Night in the Heartland. You're live with Jeffrey Daugherty.
Have you got just a little bit of time for me to say something?
Absolutely. Take all the time you need. We got 13 minutes.
Okay, no, I don't even take a couple of minutes. I got called in to Toby Singer, and he's a rabbi. Are we on YouTube still?
No, we're not. Speak freely.
Okay. The question was to him, why do you always talk about all the things that are wrong with the New Testament, about there's no proof about it, a lot of that, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And they were asking the rabbi that, and he said, because you don't have any proof of the Holocaust, not the Holocaust, but the Mount Sinai and being in Egypt and all that. Archaeologists have proved that didn't happen, or they don't have any evidence of it. So here's what his answer was. I want to tell you this because this is a question I wanted to ask him.
Absolutely.
And he came back, and this is what he's really smart, They're smart, but listen to this. He said, because our whole nation went up on the mountain and listened to the voice of God. They heard the voice of God up there, the rumbling and everything. And we're the only religion that the whole nation got to see God and hear his voice, you know, but didn't get to see him, you know, personally.
Right.
The voice. Well, here's the deal. And he said, and then God told us in the Torah that each father should pass it on down to their children and down to them. Well, here's the deal. Here, listen to this. Toby Singer, first of all, they were in the wilderness for 40 years, and most of them died off, okay?
Right.
So those people weren't able to keep passing it down. And the second thing is that they had the Ark of the Covenant, and they ended up losing that.
Yeah.
That's how they communicated with God. So after all this is done, and then the Romans took the Torah and all that away from them, and they had to recreate it in about 900 AD. So my question to Toby is, how can you be sure all those people remembered all that stuff after going through all that? And not only that, what happened to Aaron's rod that used to bloom and grow nuts on it?
What happened to it?
It's gone.
It's
gone.
gone.
So the Ark of the Covenant.
Yes, it is.
So they don't have any proof other than the word of mouth passing it down.
Exactly.
Well, you know how when you pass stuff down by word of mouth, what's that going to do?
Yeah, we've all played the telephone game.
So I don't believe their story holds any water at all.
I don't either.
So I wanted to kind of bring that up, and also no temple. Now the Zionists are going to rebuild that temple. They want to do that, but that doesn't make it back like it was.
What if I said to you, John, that if they do build a third temple, it won't be the third one; it'll be the first one? I don't think there were temples. Yeah, it's probably true, because there are a few books in the Old Testament that don't talk about the seeing God on the mountain, but he did bring that up. But fascinating
it's just
stuff.
Like any tribe passes down information to their sons, and they bar mitzvahs their sons. Tribes in Amazon do that.
Yep.
You know, but that doesn't mean they got it all right 2,000 years later.
It sure doesn't. So
I'm just saying, and if Toby knows the Christian Bible real good. He can outdo about anybody on it. I'm telling you. But I can't buy his story because he hasn't got any more proof than anybody else does.
Well stated, John. I appreciate it. Thanks for calling back. It's always good to hear from you. It's Late Night in the Heartland. You're live with Jeffrey Daugherty.
Hey, Joe.
Go ahead, Joe. Thanks for calling.
So I want to add a puzzle piece to this
Okay.
equation, and that is post World War II. Not only did the Germans get really messed up by that whole Holocaust thing that happened to them, they also had to endure the fake news of watching what supposedly their government did to the Jews.
Indeed. Are you there?
And
Okay.
so, yeah, so that is the article that I think is important to consider.
You know, Joe, that is so well said. It's so profound because, yeah, they are. They've had to, in fact, Cynthia and I were watching the last installment of The Greatest Story Never Told today, and it's just horrific what the German people have had to endure. The lies, the hatred, and now they've got them to where they believe it. It's sad. It's tragic. And you're so right, Joe, for pointing that out. You're so right for pointing that out. Terrible stuff. And we don't know the truth. And that's one of my life missions, is to get the truth out about the happenings of World War II and after World War II. I'm going to bring it out. And we're going to make it known. And it's just one of the things that we're going to start doing. It's just one of the things we're going to start doing. Kat Chattiger, S. Fierro, thank you so much for subscribing to the channel. I deeply appreciate it. What's this from? Oh, yeah, this is, I think we talked about this. This is from Judy. Yeah, it's called, and Gina sent this in. Basically, Rhode Island saying that if you want to go to restaurants, and you're going to have to get your, am I on YouTube? No, you're going to have to get your vaccination. It's called do. If you want to do things, you're going to have to do things like get the vaccine, wear your mask. Many colleges and universities bringing back the mask. Can you believe that nonsense? And this is from Holly. A virologist is stating that this COVID vaccine complications will collapse the healthcare system. And I have to say, thank the gods, it needs to be collapsed. Western medicine is on the verge of collapse because of the massive amounts of COVID-19 vaccine complications, says virologist Dr. Geert Vanden Bosch, who worked as a senior program manager at the Global Alliance for Vaccines and Immunization, Gavi, and he warned listeners in a message to Österreich, or Austria, that the fully vaccinated are filling up hospitals at an increasing rate, even though they tell you exactly the opposite. Vanden Bosch said that the true fight for health lies not in getting vaccinated. Last year, he stated publicly that trying to vaccinate people in the midst of this pandemic is the worst thing you can do if stopping the spread is really your goal. This will lead inevitably to a collapse of the health system. It cannot be otherwise. Something within me, I'm happy. The Western medical system needs to be collapsed. It needs to be destroyed, and we need to have true healers come back again and I'll say this out loud, even though you know I don't agree with a lot of his stuff, men like Dr. Brian Ardis, the hero of remdesivir. Yeah, he's a numbskull when it comes to the snake venom in the water. He says, no, I can't prove it. I know the evidence says it's not there, but I still believe it. It's that Christian mindset that allows you to believe things that aren't true. But never forget that everything you hear about Brian Ardis from the time he went on Stu Peters with this stupid snake water nonsense is all being constructed to tar and feather him and make you forget that he is the hero of remdesivir. Dr. Brian Ardis told us, showed us, broke the story, let everybody know that remdesivir should be called run. Death is near, and you can't go to a hospital. You can't get on it. You've got to stand strong. And don't let the great work of Dr. Brian Ardis in revealing the remdesivir scam be drowned in the stupidity of the watch the water nonsense. And just to let you know, Pfizer is recalling their COVID pill because it seems like it's giving people heart attacks. Isn't that interesting? And this is very frightening. The United States military has changed course, and they've said they want to see the Russian military weakened. If you boys, with all your vaxxed up transsexuals, think that you can go head to head, toe to toe with Vladimir Putin's Russian army, good luck, because you're going to need it. U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, that they said that they want to see Russia weaken to the degree that it can't do the kind of things that it's done in invading Ukraine. Let me get this straight, Lloyd. You want to see Russia so weakened that they can't go next door and do a police action on their own neighbors? Now, I know that Putin it's not good cop, bad cop. It's bad cop, worse cop. But if you want to prevent Russia from doing what they're doing now, the only way to do that is to get rid of Russia. And if you start talking about that, you don't want to do that, Lloyd. The Russian military will kick your ass. And it won't even be close. Folks, tonight we talked about Wrath Thy Name is Christianity. We had a special guest, Courtenay Turner, who was lovely, brilliant, espousing different ideas and doing it thoughtfully. And then we talked about the American Holocaust, where Dwight D. Eisenhower starved 1.7 million Germans to death, ordered the hit on General George S. Patton. Amazing. We'll take this call from John, then we'll get out of here. Late Night in the Heartland. Take us out, John. What's on your mind?
I'm going to take us out. Has anybody looked at the inflation chart recently?
No, tell us about it.
I'll tell you one thing. It's a 45 degrees straight up.
Ooh.
And I just went to Aldi's, is one of the cheaper stores in Tulsa to buy groceries at. And they sold eggs about a month ago for 88 cents a dozen. And today it's $2.99 a dozen.
Wow.
And let me tell you something, kids. Hang on, because we're getting ready to go into damn near a depression if this doesn't stop, and does it stop quick.
And he's right, folks. We've got to get ready. We're the last generation of real humans. We got to get busy because it is about to get interesting. Now, when the going gets tough, the cousins get going. But get yourself prepared. Get yourself ready. Don't give up the fight. Don't be in despair. Just know it's got to come down before it can get better. We're here for a time such as this. You've got mail. You're the last generation of real humans. You're divine. You're sovereign. You're free. Don't go on bended knee to anybody else's savior. Trust yourself. Believe in yourself. Let's unindoctrinate ourselves and let's get it done.